You know, I was skipped once, and I'll take the hit. I'll do it.
As I said, tonight's meeting is going to be pretty quick. So
I know that's why I volunteered.
I'm still behind.
Yeah, whoever's doing the meeting.
Council meeting.
All right, so I know it's late, but I will start the thing. And we do have 5 people here. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Easthampton Ranked Choice Voting Ad Hoc Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by connecting via Zoom as described on the meeting agenda. Boom. We do have no members of the public here for public speak. We are not going to be approving minutes because we don't have them yet, but we will be doing that next time. Chris, did you say you're going to be doing meeting minutes for this meeting?
I am doing the minutes, and is Barbara Craig officially a member still?
So Dan, Barbara is not, she's not re-upping on the Board of Registrars. Her term is up on December 31st. So I would say she's probably off. I will be looking for a Democratic member to join the Board of Registrars in case anybody knows of anybody. I do have one person in mind, but.
And I assume someone from the Board of Registrars will replace Barbara on this committee.
Well, the two current ones are not interested. So if somebody does come on and they're interested, I guess we could.
Well, according to the ordinance or to the bylaw or whatever, someone from the Board of Registrars has to be on this committee.
Well, I don't know what to say about that.
Does it say shall? Let me look at the law thing. I think it says that there has to be.
I mean, she can still technically be on until the end of the month.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're thinking about people to apply, maybe have that as a question.
Well, I did put it out there to the Democratic Committee, and I have one person who's shown interest, but we'll see.
So this says this is the special act. It says the ad hoc committee shall consist of the city clerk or the city clerk's designee, 1 member of the Board of Registrars of Voters, 2 members of the city council, and 3 registered voters of the city. So I would take that to mean that one of the Board of Registrar people to be on the committee. I mean, even if they don't show up to meetings, we still have a quorum, but one of them has to be on the committee. So yeah. Even if, you know.
So I guess technically after December 31st, if we don't have a Board of Registrar member, we can't meet.
I don't know. I would say let's keep meeting on the off chance that it's allowed. And if we find out that that is not allowed, I'll take it from there and figure something out. But I don't want to hold us all up just because of that. But we should, you know, for the time being, I think we're okay. But when there's a new person on the Board of Registrars, we should have one of them officially be on the committee. Whether they can make it to the meetings or not, they need to be one of them needs to be on the committee. And I'm happy to reach out to any of the current members, so that doesn't have to fall onto you, Barbara, to wrangle them. But maybe the new person will be happy to do it. So that would be ideal. Okay, so we have Chris doing minutes, ordinance discussion. Let's see, where are we at with the ordinance? I don't think I have any, I haven't had a chance at all to do any further work on the ordinance. I believe the main things that need doing at this point are the appendices, which is mainly the sort of the write-up of the software settings that are pertinent to the results.
I think we need to do write-ins.
And write-ins is the big thing missing from the current ordinance part.
Yeah.
So
Can we talk about that for a minute?
absolutely we can. Yep.
Okay. So I can take a first whack at that language over the next month if everyone's okay with that. But I just wanted to see if, like, in substance, we agree on the basic idea of it, and then I can create something and send it over to Dan to see if there's anything that you see, and we can bring it to, to incorporate it the next one. But basically the idea that I understood is that when we first tabulate the votes, after an election, the write-ins will be treated as a single candidate. And only if the write-ins win that vote will people have to go back and I don't know exactly how you do this. This might be actually a question we'd want to ask of Jeff, but it does seem like there's a way to manually assign write-ins to a given candidate if you have to. But
yes, that's called reconciliation, or I forget the word that he used.
Right. So we might need
Resolved, maybe?
Reconciled or reconciliation, I think is what it was. Maybe I'm wrong, but we should probably put a definition for what that means in, and then just say this process is only necessary if the write-in candidate, or if when treated as a single candidate, the write-ins win the election. Because if they don't, then I think that still my understanding from the time that I was sort of drafted into being a write-in candidate is that eventually that does get tabulated in one way or another. But in terms of reporting on election night, there's no need to slow that process down if in fact we know that the write-ins can't win, even if all of them are for the same person.
Is that I'm not 100% on that, because even if the write-ins can't win, the ballots that have write-ins, the preferences of those voters could affect other races.
I was wondering about that.
Right. So I don't think you can look at the write-ins as, are they capable of winning or not? I think you have to look at them as, are they eliminated? I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this.
Can I rephrase my thing? Because I think I might have said something wrong and caused more confusion. Is go for it. We can report that after 2 rounds, the mayor is, Chris Korchak. If we're without having to go through and reconcile every vote, if we know that even if those votes were for the same person, that person would not be the winner. It's just to say that we don't I imagine that on the back end there is some just regular process of, because I know when I've seen reports in the past, Barb, that you've done, they have said this is how many write-in votes each of these people received. So there's something there where that happens anyway. But in terms of we don't have to in terms of handling the tabulation on election night, they don't have to manually reconcile every ballot before they initially run it. Because the only chance that could actually produce a winner in that race is if that person, if oh wow, the write-ins actually win.
Right.
At which point,
I'll call them all other write-ins, and it's just a number. And then, so if all other write-ins is 10,
right, then it's just,
that's nothing.
Right. And that sort of exists as a candidate. And so when that candidate is eliminated, all of those votes transfer without you needing to reconcile the write-ins themselves.
But if there was a case where, after 2 rounds or 3 rounds, 53% of the vote goes to write-ins, then you're like, okay, like, well, now we got to actually, but that's the same thing. I mean, that's the same as if, I remember the time that I was drafted into being a write-in candidate. The thing that was a bit interesting about it was that I like write-ins got enough votes if they were all for one person for that person to have made it onto the ballot.
Mm.
So I was like,
Except everybody
those all
wrote it.
from-
Joe Comerford.
So
what's that?
the only time when you would really ever have that happen is if it's a known person who's going to be a write-in. I mean, I don't think that you would just randomly have enough write-ins.
No,
It would have
definitely
to
not.
be like a known write-in, and ahead of time you would probably know who that person is.
Yeah,
So I
no,
don't
yeah,
know
totally.
how you account for that.
But if they won by like a narrow margin, then you still would probably need to check, because even if there is like a high profile write-in, there could also be some people like writing in their neighbors or their dog. Or
Oh, always.
Yeah, that always happens.
But like when John Sybeck won, he was a
Right.
write-in. So, and he won over people that were on the ballot. So.
Do we, and this might not be a question that needs to be answered immediately. This is something that you can think about while you're writing up some of this stuff. Is do we need to pay special attention to candidates appearing on the ballot who are written in instead of being selected? Because that could happen, and I'm just wondering if that would. I
Well,
mean, my understanding is that would be a legal vote for the candidate.
So yeah, so if somebody writes in, like say you have 2 people running for mayor and then they don't make a choice, but they write in the person's name and they select. I mean, that vote would go towards the person, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah,
Usually you'll see that person being written in for another race.
for a different race, right?
I mean, it does occasionally happen, but I don't really think it happens enough to make it
Right.
make a difference.
if there was
I-
a race that came down to 1 vote, then, but if a race comes down to 1 vote, you should probably not declare victory anyway, because, I remember you saying at the end of the night in November, Barb, those numbers, there are always little changes.
Yeah.
Right.
Not so much in a municipal election though, because you don't have overseas and, too many provisionals, but, it could happen, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're straying into the realm of things that will probably never happen, but it still is probably good to just be covered in case they do.
I
If
think,
something, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I do think that, considering what I usually do is the all other write-ins, that
Mhm.
number, how do you address that number?
Right.
And if it's just minor, then what happens? And if it's major, then what happens?
Right.
Then you look more closely at it.
Well, in this case, if it's minor, I think there need be no reconciliation.
Right.
If it's major, then you do use, and the software that we're getting will aid in reconciliation. It has a whole module for
Right.
going through and assigning write-ins to candidates.
Right.
But
I
it's
wonder,
unlikely we would ever have to do that.
if the software, if you have a known write-in, somebody who is told people, is going to be written in, can that name be somehow put into the software so it can be those?
That's gonna come up in the training that we do with LHS. My understanding so far is that yes, but having not been able to sit down with the software, I don't exactly know what the process is. But just having read the manual for it, it seems like that is something that can do.
Maybe Barbara just said what I'm about to ask because I was typing, but this module will present an image of the write-in for the person handling it to assign a vote to.
We're going to find out, but my understanding is yes, is that you get
Okay.
a scanned image to adjudicate write-ins using the software. So you're really just like at the computer running RTR, and you can click through them and use the interface to simply assign them.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So I don't think it has to be. That's my understanding, at least.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
find
not
out as soon as we get it, but
because the ICPs don't make a scanned copy of any ballots. So I don't know how that would happen.
it doesn't put that onto the card.
No, there's no images of the ballots.
But we've never decrypted these cards before. We've
No,
only
as far
used
as
the
I know,
tape.
they're not set up to do that. The other equipment, ES&S, I think may do that, but actually the question had come up as far as images of the ballots, and it doesn't. It doesn't make any picture of each individual ballot.
We're gonna have to double check that because
I think so.
the example materials that Jeff sent with all the sample marked ballots for Town of Amherst, those were all scans, and I'm pretty sure he ran that through an ICP. So
unless it's something that gets updated, because as of right now, all there is what you saw printed out of the machine.
right,
No
yeah,
ballot images at all.
right. No, I know, and I know that we've, we only do get the receipt, but once we have this RTR software, we're going to be able to decrypt those CF cards. And I think it may be the case that scanned images of ballots are stored on those CF cards.
And I'm not sure about that.
Neither am I. So
Yeah.
so we'll double check that. But like I said, the test run stuff that Jeff did had ballot images that were certainly scans.
I mean, those ballot images, I mean, the ballots are going to be hand counted at the polls just like they always are. I mean, the write-ins will go in just like we do right now. They have to be done at the polls.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll have the actual ballots in front of us. We don't need to see them scanned.
So
I mean, the likelihood of us needing to reconcile the write-ins is very, very low. But if we have to, this is a process that might actually be a lot easier than doing it by hand. I mean,
yeah, I do think they need to be counted at the polls, though. That's the state guidelines.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so this might end up being something that's
What
a sanity check on that, or an additional,
Right.
or maybe it doesn't need to be done at all, because we have the hand counts. But
so it sounds to me like maybe we need to follow up with Jeff and get some clarification on how these things actually, like how this reconciliation process actually works. And I'm wondering whether or not it actually makes sense for me to take a stab at writing language until I fully understand sort of the process in question here. I mean, I don't think that anything he's going to say is going to change my idea, but
I would do it, but treat the reconciliation process for the moment as a black box.
Okay.
As just write-ins are, assume that you have a candidate that is called write-ins, and assume that there is a process called reconciliation that will turn that candidate into X other named candidates, if necessary.
Right.
And for the time being, just I think that's all. That's probably all the ordinance needs to address. Period. But it'll be easy to move that around a little bit once we know the details of it. But I think it's safe. I think that process is safe to assume for the moment.
Okay. Cool.
Probably half an hour.
And all right, so that's all I have on that.
I'm gonna reach out to Jeff about this. I think now that the November election is over, he's a lot more sane and available. Just nice. Scan images, and I'm just taking a note. Okay. So the other things that have to do, so the other things is a config setting summary page and then voter education materials. The voter education materials, I don't think we necessarily need to have as part of the ordinance, but we do need to have as part of the ordinance if we want to dictate how voter education materials are distributed, made available, etc.
That
Let's
doesn't seem
start-
like
let's-
something that would have to be in the ordinance to me.
You think, yeah, I mean, and that's fine with me if it shouldn't, if we want to leave that out entirely.
That
But we
could
do,
be
I mean,
like-
we have the option of putting in something that says a little bit about how this stuff is going to be presented to voters.
Right,
I mean,
to me.
My one thing
You-
there, that if we do that, and I'm not necessarily against it, but it is going to bring up, I think I said this last time,
Yeah.
it's going to bring up sort of an ongoing sort of, our charter it is not necessarily perfectly clear about where the exact powers of the mayor and the city council begin and end.
Mhm.
And one area in particular that has gotten mayors and city attorneys and whatnot involved in the past is any case where an ordinance appears to direct city employees to spend money or take certain actions.
right, yep.
Thing that the city has tended to, like the city as in the mayor and the mayor's staff and the department heads and the city attorney have tended to pretty consistently feel is like I think the word we basically are right now is like we could write an ordinance saying that the city should, that like officers of the city should not do certain things.
Yep.
Like putting restrictions on things, saying that if they do things they have to maybe do it a certain way. But the second that you actually say the city shall do this, they feel that at that point you're in mayor territory. And I kind of frankly agree.
And that's specifically in terms of like things that cost a fair amount of money to do, right?
Yeah, or like, you know, like the city council, we can block an appropriation to fund a project, but what we can't do is like go and so we have some control over the day-to-day operations. But what we can't do is just like be like, hey, you know, DPW guys, go fix this pothole. Like that, at the end of the day, that's the mayor's domain. And I do feel like now I've spoken, you know, in passing to the mayor about this. She understands that it's important that it gets done. And she understands that we're probably going to come back to her sometime in the spring with a request for funds to do something like this.
Yeah, I've been in touch with them about
And
that.
I don't anticipate a lot of pushback when it comes to like, if we say, hey, this is our proposed plan and this is how much it's going to cost, as long as those things are within reason. I don't suspect that it's a problem, but I also don't think that that should be necessarily part of the ordinance.
Mhm.
I tend to agree with you, especially since some of this stuff is going to be sort of a one-time or a
Yeah.
implementation
Right.
thing, and then it's not going to matter as much. Is there any aspect of voter education that any of you feel like does belong in the ordinance? And I'm thinking broadly here, so it could be stuff, you know, posted on the little voting booths.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
or-
the only thing I would see. Maybe you could state what should be posted at the polls. You know,
Exactly.
voter education on marking ballot, you know, should be posted at the polls. You know, something instructive.
And
something
I'm not even
something
saying
that
that-
will continue down the road. It won't be like we're going to do this one mailing and it's done, but something like that.
Right.
That's probably good.
I don't even know if that's necessary, because that's something that we can just do because it
We can
makes
just
sense.
do it.
Or like,
Is there anything else like that that you guys feel
Yeah,
have
sure.
any
On the city website, something like that.
city website?
like I don't know if this is something that we actually should do, but we might be able to put something in there being like again, I'm not saying that this is something we should do, but like if we wanted to say that poll workers had to complete some sort of training
Mm,
education, that's something where you're going up against that line. But I think you could make the case that like to be a poll worker, this is now a requirement. If we felt like, because that is one thing is like I would, again, I don't know if that's the way that you get at that or the tactic that you want to use, but I do think that like, I think it would be really valuable to make sure that the people working at the polls, if somebody like just comes in and they literally have not been paying any attention up to this point and they have no idea what's going on. They're like, what do I do with this?
Or if they're hostile to the
or
idea.
if they're, well, if they're hostile to the idea, then they don't have to use it. But if they are genuinely not sure how to do it, then I think it is important that the people who are there are able to answer any questions that they have. And that could be really simply done. I mean, there's a lot of ways. I actually will probably defer to Barb and, you know, to some extent Dan, as people who have actually been poll workers, on the correct strategy there. But what I'm saying is that like, that is something that I believe could be, if we're just talking about what is appropriate to put into an ordinance or not, if that's some, if there was something that you wanted to do like that, I think that could theoretically be something that could fit into an ordinance.
Yeah, I guess I'd rather not do that because, you know, we don't really have required training right now. A lot of it is on the job training. I do training for wardens and clerks, but the workers, not so much, even though they all get mailed information. So to require them to do like this specific small, like learning, it kind of, the whole job, I mean, the whole training, I don't know, it would be good that they're familiar with it, but not maybe have it in the ordinance.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just however you want to do it. I do think that that's something that, you know, we should, when we're talking about voter education, I think that that's an element of it that we might want to talk about, is like, how are we making sure that all the sort of the public facing people in the city have the right information and can competently answer, you know, questions that might come up.
That's also one of the very, very few things that poll workers are explicitly allowed to do, is assist voters in how to mark your ballot.
Right.
You know, they can't say like, oh, this is what I know about this candidate, blah, blah, blah. But if people have a question about, you know, what do I do with this form? That's
right.
What poll workers are there to, and certainly able to help with. I also agree. I don't think this rises to the level of needing like a training session or module or something, but at the very least a cheat sheet that
right.
all of them can reference and, you know, look at with a voter and just be like, you know, because there's a lot of things that are going to come up, and there's a very short number of things that are going to come up a lot, and then everything else, you know, can defer to a clerk or a warden or whatever if the poll worker doesn't know the answer to it. And if someone's hostile, they're immediately going to be diverted to a warden or constable at the polls anyway.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know about this process either.
I mean, a random check-in person isn't going to be having a confrontation with a hostile person for very long. I feel like someone is going to interject that, and because there's going to be other people who need to vote. And I don't know. I just don't see.
Did you run into hostile people when you were doing it?
Well, we haven't done our.
No, well, not with ranked choice voting, but just in general. Was anyone hostile towards you at all for any reason?
There was an issue in, was it precinct 3? There's a person, I've only heard about this, but.
Oh yeah, well, that was a particular person who is known to be a problem, and yep.
The only reason I ask is because, you know, even if someone hates RCV, it would have to be a pretty special person to take it out on the poll worker, you know?
Yeah, in general, there haven't been a lot of problems. I mean, the most hostile I've had to deal with personally is people wearing campaign materials.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, they're actually usually very cooperative in terms of covering them up, or, you know, so it's especially in a pandemic, I feel like even the people who might have a bone to pick are kind of
ideally we're hoping it's not going to be a permanent pandemic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it will end at some point. But I think people who are otherwise spoiling for a little bit of a fight are kind of like, oh, look, you're out here sort of risking your health to make this system happen. And so they're a little,
Right.
I don't know. I felt like in November, people were very, on the whole, at least in precinct 4, very cooperative. So,
We're real civilized here in precinct 4. Just the most civil.
well, I mean, and everyone was in the high school in the same
Yeah.
crowded little,
Oh yeah, because Whitebrook is
Right.
a bomb site right now. It's awful.
that was,
That was a right call there. Jeez.
it was, so that was even a little more compact than usual, but it seemed to go pretty smooth. So.
Anything else on the ordinance we want to discuss?
Well, the only to-dos that I have are handling of write-ins, config setting summary. Well, I want to discuss the config setting summary page because I was curious if there's anyone who wants to take a first stab at that besides myself. You don't have, it doesn't have to be crazy polished or anything, and no one needs to do it. But if anyone is like, sure, I'll take a first draft at that, that would be cool, but I can also do it.
I feel like I trust you the most to do
Yeah.
I don't, not me, that's for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll do it, and I'll try and have at least a draft of it for us to look at by the next
We're
meeting.
not hanging you out. It's a vote of confidence.
No, I know. And my goal on it is to use like 6th grade English on this, like make it really as simple English as possible and less than a single sheet. So I really do want that to be an appendix on the ordinance though. So it's just approved by the committee. It's there, it's available. It's doesn't fall on anyone else to deal with. That's all I have for ordinance stuff. Does anyone else have other stuff? No, we're gonna get this thing done soon, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Great. Okay, so Tom, you're gonna come back with some write-in language that we're all gonna, or actually you'll probably send it to me first and we'll work it into the ordinance and bring it back to the committee to look at. I'm going to work on the config setting summary page, and we're all going to think a little bit about voter education stuff. I'm going to decide whether it makes sense to put in a sentence about that in terms of postings. It may not even make sense at all. I mean, it might make sense to just have that be common sense. I don't know if that needs to be
It
ordinance.
might make it simpler just to have it, just the parameters in the ordinance and leave all the rest of it to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, voter education materials shall be available
At the polls. Yeah. Have something maybe really general just to make sure that if at any point in the future this is in some total other people's hands, there's some kind of voter education material available.
Yeah, I mean, that's only fair, if it's not what people are, maybe familiar with and they want to have a look at a piece of paper, like that, fine.
Yeah.
It
But I
should
don't
be
think it needs to
available.
be on that. Okay, cool. Well, that's great. Where did my agenda go?
I think funding discussion, but
Yep.
yeah.
Funding discussion. Great. Okay, so there is some updates on this, which is great news. A free cash acquisition, whatever the word is, appropriation of $8,000 for the software and bundle stuff has been submitted,
Neat.
which is cool because that required a bunch of different signatures, and now it's the real deal. And so that is going to the city council if it hasn't already.
It went. So it was.
It went and got sent to
finance.
finance.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
So
sent
that's
to
in-
finance last night.
Great. Okay.
I strongly suspect it'll go through with no issue, and probably not even very much discussion because it went with a collection of other free cash appropriations and whatnot that in total summed to over $1 million.
Holy crap.
I think I would be very surprised if there's a whole lot of discussion about this $8,000 appropriation.
Yeah.
For a thing that the voters voted to approve. I'll likely stop in on that meeting if I don't have a conflicting meeting, just to.
I'm planning to be in that meeting too. So
So, yeah, so December 30th at 6 o'clock is the finance. I've already got the agenda with the Zoom link on the website.
Okay.
So that's already up. And then it's up for public hearing on January 6th. And that will be posted next week with the Zoom link.
and that public hearing addresses all of the free cash appropriations at the same
Right.
time.
Okay. Well,
About half of them.
yeah, about half. The finance subcommittee meeting is the most, I think, the more important of almost of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing that comes out of finance 3-0. Well, I shouldn't say that. That actually did happen this year. Nearly nothing to come out of, like, this is just, it's not going to be, like, I just know the city councilors well enough to very confidently say this won't be an issue, but feel free to speak on its behalf in either of those occasions.
Well, I'm going to come into the finance meeting in case there's any questions.
I'll probably go there too. I mean, they may have some other questions of what else can we, what other expenses, they might,
Right.
they might just as background want to know what other expenses they should be looking for.
Yep.
The rest of them will be put into my election budget. I'm going to do 4,000 and the 800, like you had, Dan.
Yep.
Yep. Hopefully.
I mean, part of me wants to just ask you about that, because your election budget, I know, got cut 2.5%.
Well, you know what,
it does make sense. Sorry, go ahead.
So I looked at this. Yeah, I gotta figure out how my election budget's gonna work this year, because I bought all this new equipment. But it's the overall budget, and the personnel expenses on a big election year is a lot. Whereas, the budget goes up and down. But I did already write to Nicole and to Jen and to Val, even though she's retiring, saying this is going to be something extra that is not anticipated, is not normal. And I think it was pretty clear that they understood that, this $4,800, it's going to affect my budget, and they should expect it.
Yeah.
So
the 800 is going to be an ongoing yearly budgeted expense, but the 4,000 I could see submitting as a free cash appropriation the same way that we did the 8,000.
Well, I think it might as well go in as part of the budget.
Okay.
I think that's probably the best way to do it. It'll, just put it in my budget, and then as expenses come up, we'll pay it out of my budget.
Okay. If that's easier for you, that's fine. I only brought that up because I thought it might be either easier or more politically expedient to do it the other way. But if that's not the case, then.
Yeah. I mean, if it's totally cut out of my budget, then we'll have to look at another option. But I did already write to the mayor, and and they all know that this is coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's likely to get approved as part of the budget. And then.
I hope so. I mean, yeah, the election budget is not like a typical budget, because it really fluctuates up and down every year. And in a local election year, actually, the expenses are higher than because you have to print ballots, you have to program more machines. We do have more equipment this year, more maintenance costs. You get things for free, but there's always costs down the road. This is going to be one of them. We're only going to use this every other year, but we still have to pay the $800 every year, even though it's just going to sit there doing nothing.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
For now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
For now.
For now. And
well,
also thank God it's not 2,500.
Yeah,
I know.
I mean, we only have city elections every other year. So in the off years, I won't use it.
Right.
So.
Dominion has certainly been in the news a lot lately. Okay, well then that sounds fantastic and simple if that gets through in the budget. We obviously by the next meeting will have something to report in terms of the 8,000, as soon as that gets appropriated, I mean, literally as soon as we can get it, I think we should.
Talk to Jeff.
Oh yeah, we should buy it. We should, because that comes with a laptop with the software on it and at least some training from LHS. And the sooner we get it and all that, the better.
Yeah, we probably actually should give him a heads up that this is going through the, in a couple of weeks, we could have the money.
Yeah, I'll add that, since I'm going to be writing to him about
Great
question. I'll add note that update.
And I do also think that when we do get the ordinance done, that he should definitely have a, be able to look at it.
Certainly. Yep. In fact, I can send him a draft of it.
That's a good
as
idea.
it is, and so he can comment on what's there. Okay. I do have one other piece of financial information to report, which is I did get a quote. This was a total he was like, hey, you want to get a quote on this? And I was like, why not? Let's talk about it. Just as a number. We're not going to be doing this, by the way, because it's way expensive. But if we wanted to adjust the layout at all of the RCV ballots, as in the spacing and the way that they look and numbers and circles and stuff like that, the quote there is $25,000.
Why would we want to do that?
No, well, if anyone wanted to do that. And the reason that it even came up was when I made that little, the first voter education material draft, and it had some images on there.
Yeah.
I noticed that the layout that the software does, it's just a little bit less compact and simple than I would want it to be. The numbers are floating outside the circles and there's a lot of spacing and all that. And so I had sent a thing to Jeff, or I had sent that to Jeff and been like, hey, can it look like this? Is that easy in the software? And he was like, I don't know, I have to check. And he checked and he was like, no, it can't be there. It can't be that can't be altered, but it can be altered, but we'd have to have a development team do some stuff on it. Do you want me to get a quote for that? And I was like, okay, sure. Cause if it's, I didn't know if it was going to be $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, who knows, the answer is 25,000. So there you go.
That's probably not going to happen.
No, it's not. I can say definitively that's not going to happen, but it's interesting. So the fact that the software doesn't allow for that sort of tweaking is somewhat surprising to me, but
maybe it will down the road.
I as it gets more and more adopted, I wouldn't be surprised. So okay, great. Funding discussion. Any new business? No. Great. I have one piece of new business that I just want to bring up and sort of a tangent to this, which is we are looking likely like we're going to actually be able to buy this license and software soon. So I want to start thinking about a training that we do, because I think at least some of that is part of this, and that could be so in the sense of, let's imagine that LHS is willing to do a software training session. Let's say that it's, I don't know how many hours we're going to get as part of this, but let's assume 2 hours, and let's assume there's still a pandemic, so it's Zoom. Does anyone have thoughts about who should be in on that training, in terms of should this whole committee be there for that?
I think it depends on what kind of training it is. Is it training for like me or you for like what's going to happen at the end of the night, actual hands-on kind of stuff?
I hope it is. I mean, that's what I want it to be.
I think that, I think the people who are going to use it are going to be the ones who are going to need the training for that.
Right.
Yeah, with respect, I don't see myself using that training very much.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think it's something that should be during a committee meeting, or that even the whole committee should have to be a
No,
part of. But I do want to start thinking about scheduling something like that, because I think it'll be great, and I want to move forward with it as soon as possible, because we're less than a year away from doing this for the first time. So I know it seems like a long time, but it's going to go quick. So
My only thing is, I sort of want to we don't need to do this tonight, but I just sort of like everyone to think on the idea of, do we want to sit through a training before sending our draft ordinance to city council?
Mm.
Absolutely positively sure that nothing that we experience does not line up with what's in the ordinance. That's my only thing. And if the answer is no, then I'm fine with that. But that's just like a question I want to just pose people of, like, wouldn't it be a shame if like particularly when we're talking about like reconciling write-ins or whatever, if we like specified a process and then realized that that process doesn't precisely describe what would actually go on here, would that be a problem?
I see. So you're advocating that we try and do at least this first training before the ordinance is sent to city council.
I'm just saying we should think about it.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I actually was thinking the opposite, like no, but I think you make a
What
good point.
if, I mean, wasn't having Jeff look at it maybe one of the
I
things
mean,
that we're-
I would doubt that the training is probably going to be more like, this is how you do this, this is how you do. It's not going to go into the behind the scenes stuff that they're going to program.
Yeah.
So that's more what the ordinance is the more the behind the scenes. They're not going to say, well, you put the thing in here and you do this and you push this button and you do that. That's I would think. I think having him look at the ordinance is really the most important part, because that's the behind the scenes stuff. The actual using, I would hope that this software is going to be user friendly enough that, I won't have to be thinking of all this technical stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I think having him review the ordinance is the most important part.
Yeah. And he will. I do sort of like the idea of at least seeing some of the software firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it would be, even if there was just like a brief overview of how it works, that like a video or something that we could all watch.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
might be useful.
Well, I'll ask him about that when
Like what kind of
when I send
training
him the
it is.
draft. Scope of training. Okay. Cool. Does anyone have any? Oh, there's a kitty. Hi. Does anyone have anything else to add? Okay, let's pick our next meeting, which is gonna be, let's go for January 21st.
Works for me.
Sounds good.
Good.
Let me double check. Yeah, there's nothing happening. I mean, it's worth checking, but it's not like things happen anymore.
All right. No, they don't. January 21st, 6 p.m. is going to be our next meeting. And I think that we are pretty good. Shall we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right. We're adjourned. Thank you so much, guys. Sorry I was a little
Good night,
late.
everyone.
That's okay.
And
Merry Christmas.
enjoy
Merry
the
Christmas,
snow
everyone.
and holidays.
Yeah.
Enjoy the holiday and all the
Digging out of the snow. So, all right.
Bye-bye.